Did you know that at a crucial time in the history of Westeros, the Seven Kingdoms was ruled by the Maesters? Well, by one Maester in particular, and with more power than any king or Hand of the King has ever had before or after. Let's take a look. Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. On this channel we dive deep into A Song of Ice and Fire, The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher, and more when we get the time. If you're new here, welcome. After the end of the Dance of the Dragons, and I suppose there are slight spoiler warnings here for House of the Dragon, just proceed with caution if you're a show-only person. After the end of the Dance of the Dragons, Aegon III was king, but he was only 10 years old. Both his parents and all his grandparents were dead, and he was understandably rather traumatised by what he had already experienced in his short life. Everyone agreed that the continent needed peace, and as the wounds of war were still raw, the Iron Throne itself must be visibly above the fault lines that had riven the kingdom. Aegon was therefore married to Jaehaera, the daughter of his predecessor and rival Aegon II, and the post of Defender of the Realm was established, an existing title but not always used, and given to a former member of Team Black, Leowyn Corbray, to balance the new Hand of the King, Tywin Lannister, former Green. In addition, as Aegon was underage, the powers of the king were taken on by a regent, or as it turned out, a team of regents, 7 of them no less, to ensure that no one person had too much power. And beneath all that, there was the usual small council to manage the different aspects of the realm's bureaucracy, and the Lords Paramount in the regions. So far, so good. It was a slightly unwieldy administration, 9 different people who each thought they could act with the authority of the king, plus the king himself, plus the small council with their varying egos, but it only had to last a bit over 5 years until Aegon III could take the reins himself and appoint his own team. Surely in a time of peace, most if not all of those otherwise perfectly healthy people could survive for just 5 years to ensure the balance of power. Well, let's see. Aegon III himself kept out of politics during this time. He rarely spoke or even left his chambers. Unless things got personal to him, he largely left the politics to others. As we've seen, the system had been set up so that no one person or agenda could dominate Westeros. It would be ruled by consensus, 7 regents, a full small council, a Hand of the King, and a Defender of the Realm. But they started to fall. The protector of the realm, Leowyn Corbray, died of winter fever in 133 AC. Tywin Lannister, Hand of the King, died in the same year. Of the 7 regents, Corlys Velaryon died of old age in 132, Royce Carron resigned the same year to focus on fighting the Dornish. The next year, Torrhen Manderly resigned because his father had died and he was now Lord of White Harbour, and Roland Westerling died of winter fever and old age. The next year, 134 AC, Jane Arryn died of a chest cold, and Manfred Mouton died of old age and illness, apparently. That's 4 of the 7 regents dead within 3 years, and another 2 resigned. The one who miraculously survived was Grand Maester Muncan. We'll come back to him in a moment, because those regents were replaced with 3 more. Unwin Peake was made regent and also Hand of the King, but fell from grace after an attempted coup and was stripped of both titles. Corwyn Corbray lasted only a few months as regent before he was killed in the civil war in the Vale of Arryn. Thaddeus Rowan lasted a bit longer as both regent and Hand of the King, but his fate was even more tragic. He died a broken man, relieved of his offices and on his way back home. We're not told by the Maesters how he died, just that he died along with 2 of his sons on the way home. Move along, there's nothing to see here. We don't know all the members of the small council at the time, but we do know that Thaddeus Rowan was also Master of Laws before his untimely death. Gedmund Peake, then Alyn Velaryon, were both Master of Ships at various points, but had left the position vacant by 135. Willis Fell, Robin Massey, and Marston Waters all served as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard between 131 and 135, but all 3 also died. Marston Waters also served as Hand of the King before dying in the care of Grand Maester Muncan. Muncan, again, seriously, remember the name. Because let's pause for a moment and consider what happened to the leadership of the 7 Kingdoms between 131 and 135 AC, a period when the country had a few border disputes and the like, but was overall trying to heal and unite after the Civil War. 3 or maybe even 4 hands of the king died one after the other. Every member of the small council died or left the council. 6 of the 7 regents appointed died or left their posts. 3 more were appointed in their place, and all of them left their posts within 2 years. King Aegon was warned of the potential for this, incidentally. During his own short stint as Hand of the King, Cregan Stark told the king that "This city is a nest of vipers. There are liars, turncloaks, and poisoners in this court who would murder you as quick as they did your uncle to secure their own power." Only one person survived all this, just one person, Grand Maester Munken. If you've never heard of him, don't worry. I suspect history, by which I mean the history recorded by the Maesters, has deliberately not shone much of a light on him outside of his role as Maester and Chronicler. We know nothing of Munken's early life, just that he was chosen by the Citadel as their new Grand Maester at the conclusion of the Dance of the Dragons. So if he has any previous affiliations or prejudices, we don't know, but we can be pretty certain that this is the man that the Citadel wanted there for whatever agenda they had. And after all this, Munken writes his true telling of what happened during this time and during the preceding dance, which even the Maesters accept is a bit less than true. But still, our version of Fire and Blood is in large part based on his true telling. If you've read Fire and Blood, you'll know that Munken and his true telling are referenced literally dozens of times as arbiters of what actually happened, and only occasionally challenged. History is written by the victors, as they say, and I think George R. R. Martin wants us to question whether what we read is actually what happened. Anyway, back to Munken. Munken arrives in person in King's Landing in the year 131 AC, shortly after the end of the war, to be welcomed onto the Council of Regents. And we have an intriguing insight into how he viewed the king he was acting on behalf of when he wrote back to the Citadel. We read that he thinks first about Aegon and his child bride. Both of them are broken. Aegon shows little interest in his wife or any other girl. He does not ride or hunt or joust, but neither does he enjoy sedentary pursuits such as reading, dancing, or singing. Though his wits seem sound enough, he never initiates a conversation, and when spoken to, his answers are so curt, one would think the very act of talking was painful to him. He has no friends, save for the bastard boy Gaiman Palehair, and seldom sleeps through the night. Aegon seldom smiles and never laughs, but neither does he display any outward signs of anger or fear, save in regards to dragons, the very mention of which sends him into a rare rage. Orwell was wont to call his grace calm and self-possessed. I say the boy is dead inside. He walks the halls of the Red Keep like a ghost. Brothers, I must be frank. I fear for our king and for the kingdom. So Munken thought that his king was broken, dead inside, like a ghost. That sounds like a strong motive to provide leadership of the Seven Kingdoms in the king's absence. And sometime in the year 135, Munken finds himself in control of the entire Seven Kingdoms. How come? Well, as we've seen, Munken was the last man standing of the sizable bureaucracy that was left managing the Seven Kingdoms during Aegon's infancy. There had been 7 regents, then 6 died or left, and 3 more were appointed, and they also died or were deposed, leaving Munken as the sole regent. 5 different Hands of the King came and went, ending with Munken as Hand of the King. 1 protector of the realm died and the post ended, and at least 6 other members of the small council died or left their office, leaving Munken as the only member of the small council. Hand of the King, the only regent, the only member of the small council. If you want more of a conspiracy theory, you could point to the fact that Munken was there for the deaths of at least 2 of the regents, consistently acted to contain information of what was happening in King's Landing from reaching the wider kingdom, and personally persuaded Aegon to remove the last other regent and Hand of the King from power. Or perhaps you could just point to the fact that it feels inconceivable that perhaps as many as 20 otherwise healthy people should die or be deposed in such a short space of time, leaving just Munken. Any way you look at it, Munken's role here is really shady, and the timing for a silent coup could not have been more perfect. Normally, you might expect the Lords Paramount to notice what was going on in King's Landing and maybe intervene, but at this time, the Arryns were in the middle of a Vale-wide civil war, the Starks were dealing with a brutal 6-year winter, the Lannisters were effectively at war with the Greyjoys, the Tullys were dealing with the devastating aftermath of the war, and the Baratheons, Lannisters and Tyrells had regencies of their own for child rulers. In summary, Muncan was in complete charge of the Seven Kingdoms, with his newly acquired powers, as well as the Maesters' own influence and control over communications and record-keeping, and no one had any way to either stop him or even know what he was doing. And that situation lasted for, well, we don't know exactly how long for, because Fire and Blood quickly glosses over that period, but maybe 6 months to a year, from partway into 135 AC through to sometime in 136, at which point Muncan oversaw the apparent random selection of 3 more regents, though, as even Fire and Blood admits, the lots fell to William Stackspear, Mark Merryweather, and Laurent Grandison, of whom it could truly be said that they were as inoffensive as they were undistinguished. So not exactly the kind of political heavyweights that might get in the way of any plans Muncan might have had. So Muncan had pretty absolute power with almost no oversight for a significant amount of time, and the way he got it, with regents and hands dropping like flies around him, was pretty suspicious, but what might he have done with that time? Well, Fire and Blood gives us few details, just that for the rest of that year the Grand Maester served as both regent and hand, for the realm required governance and Aegon had still not reached the age of manhood. And we have to say that we don't have any evidence that he did anything suspicious. Except the coincidence that before Muncan's reign, dragons were still being hatched from eggs as usual, and after, none ever were again. The Dance of the Dragons had hugely reduced the dragon population of Westeros. At its start there were 20, by its end just 4, with just one of those, Morning, in Targaryen control. But there were still a lot of dragon eggs, and no one really doubted that, given time, the dragon population would increase once more. The thing was that the new boy king was understandably rather anti-dragon at the time. I say understandably because he had just witnessed his mother being eaten by a dragon, and his father and 3 half-brothers had also just been killed riding dragons. And then, as we read in Fire and Blood, the people of King's Landing woke to a sight that had not been seen since the dark days of the dance, a dragon in the skies above the city. Lady Rhaena, at the age of 19, was flying her dragon Morning for the first time. The king refused to step outside to witness it. Then followed the hatching of another dragon, but this one was, we read, a monstrosity, a wingless worm, maggot-white and blind. It immediately attacked baby Laena Velaryon. The king angrily demanded that all dragon eggs be removed from the Red Keep. If ever there was a moment to act, it was now. The dragon eggs had been gathered in one place and out of sight. The king wanted nothing to do with them. The Maesters were soon in complete control of the instruments of government, and the rest of the Seven Kingdoms was distracted by events elsewhere. And the Maesters did want the dragons dead. We looked at that in our previous video about the Maesters, and there is at least one in-the-know Maester, Marwyn, in A Song of Ice and Fire, who believes that the Maesters did kill all the dragons last time around. Do we have any evidence that Muncan did use his power to poison the dragon eggs so that no more healthy dragons were born? We don't. But then Muncan wrote the history of that time, so of course we wouldn't. But he 100% had the means, motive, and opportunity, and it is undeniable that something changed then to stop healthy dragons being born. Incidentally, if you're wondering, there were just 3 dragon eggs that were outside of the Maester's control at this point, so almost certainly weren't poisoned by them. The 3 that Alyssa Farman stole and then sold to the Sea Lord of Braavos. And what happened to them? Well, I think we next see them in the opening chapters of A Game of Thrones, but that's another video. Is Archmaester Marwyn right? Did the Maesters kill all the dragons the first time around? If so, it was here, after the Dance of the Dragons, as Grand Maester Muncan emerged alone as the undisputed most powerful man in the Seven Kingdoms, and then refused to write anything of what happened during that period in his history book. If you'd like more videos like this, diving deep into the history and lore of A Song of Ice and Fire, there's a link appearing now on the left of your screen. Or to support this channel, thank you. There's a link appearing now on the right of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.